with former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General John Yoo. Thank you both for joining us. Tom, first to you. Tom, former President Trump at today's court hearing in Florida. What do you make of today's action where Trump's team asked the judge to toss out special counsel Jack Smith's classified documents case against Trump?
Sure. Well, Liz, these were arguments we knew were coming. The president and his legal team were asking the federal judge in Florida to throw the case out entirely. Based on her questions from the bench today, it doesn't seem like she's inclined to do it. There were a few points, Liz, where she made comments along the lines of, look, these may be very good arguments and powerful arguments that you can make at the trial, that you can make to the jury, but I'm not sure I see a basis for using them to dismiss this case entirely. So I think it was a sign that the judge is taking these arguments seriously. She held hours of hearing and hearing the lawyers argue these theories, but at the end of the day, it doesn't seem likely that she's going to throw this whole case out the door at this stage.
Interesting. Now, John, what do you think? Do you think this whole case should be thrown out because Trump is being overcharged? He's being attacked in the courts. Do you think Trump should only be charged with obstruction? Because we're hearing reports there was debate in the court about arbitrary enforcement, selective prosecution, that, you know, how does special counsel Robert Hur drop charges against President Biden after Hur found President Biden willfully kept U.S. secrets for his $8 million memoir?
You make a good point, Liz. There's two different kinds of charges here. One is for, did President Trump take classified information? That's where any selective prosecution claim would lie. Generally, the federal courts don't like to review how the Justice Department chooses to bring cases. That's a hard road to hoe. But I think that the obstruction case is where you'll see the special counsel move his efforts and move the prosecution. That's an easier case to prove, although I do think that President Trump does have some legitimate questions to raise about why is he being pursued when Robert Hur basically appears let President Biden off because President Biden he's an elderly man with a poor memory, but otherwise seemed to have committed mishandling of classified information too.
What do you think about that, Tom?
Look, I think it's a fair point. I mean, I think that Robert Hur's decision to include all the stuff in his report about Biden being elderly with a poor memory was a way of really justifying to the world why he ultimately was declining to bring charges against Biden. But I do think it raises concerns just about a double standard. In other words, you could have two people who commit the same type of acts, and yet one gets charged and the other doesn't, out of a concern on the prosecutor's part that, well, a jury might look more sympathetically on person A than person B, which may or may not be relevant to a charging decision, but you got to wonder if you do have an equal system of justice in that universe.
Yeah, what Tom just said, you know, this particular case against Trump is supposed to go to trial May 20th, but it looks like it may be delayed. And John, the judge reportedly hammered the fact that no former president or vice president has been charged under the Espionage Act for retaining classified documents. Those are about 32 counts against Trump. I mean, the Trump team argues national security files routinely were taken by past presidents. So isn't the remedy here civil, not criminal? That records collection efforts by the National Archives is civil in nature, and that should foreclose criminal cases?
I'd go even farther than that, Liz. And Liz, that's one of the few times when I go farther than you. This
Please
is a case,
do.
I think, where we should not be going to court at all. You should never have done a coercive search of a former president's house. Instead, the archives should just work it out, negotiate with the former presidents, as they've always done in the past, to work out disputes over what the president should keep versus what the archives should keep. And I think that's where Trump has the best case to make about being selectively pursued, is that this is the first time we've seen criminal charges against any president. Maybe you can talk about January 6th, but using the criminal justice system to go over a past president about mishandling documents, that's way overkill, and it sets a terrible precedent for future presidents. You don't want future presidents always being worried about being prosecuted by unfriendly successor administrations because they do the wrong thing with documents.
Yeah, that's the final word, I think, Tom, what John just said. You know, and then you have the Georgia 2020 case. I just want to quickly button this whole segment with this. It's now delayed past the election, likely, the Georgia 2020 case, Tom, because Judge Scott McAfee tossed out 6 charges in that case, 3 against Trump, on the grounds DA Fani Willis and her team did not specify the felony that they're alleging Trump and his co-defendant committed in the first place, Tom. So doesn't that make the RICO charge weaker against Trump because those charges were dismissed? Tom, what we're seeing here is Democrats going to the courts, attacking Trump, trying to get rid of him before the election.
Yes, and Liz, to your point, I think Fani Willis made a huge error when she brought this massive complaint. As you know, she named a huge number of defendants. It was a sprawling complaint. It read like a Russian novel that went on and on for pages and pages. And in a way, the judge might actually have done her a favor in a weird sort of way by throwing out some of these charges because she did not adequately allege them. It's Prosecutor 101. You got to allege the facts in the law that you're saying the defendant violated, and she failed to do that.
Gotcha. Tom Dupree, John Yoo, thank you so much. We got breaking news coming into the studio. Let's get right to former